All right, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to see a practical demonstration on Webhook. Now, what actually is Webhook? So in the previous video, we covered the theoretical aspect of Webhook. So let me cover it in a nutshell. So basically, Webhook is something which is used for doing the automated build and test that comes into continuous integration, right? That is the CI part of Jenkins, right? In the previous video, we learned how a webhook works, what is the actual use case of webhook. So whatever changes we make on the fly into the repo, we manually have to go to trigger the build for Jenkins. But what if there is any automated way to do it? So there is definitely a way, and webhook is the answer. In the previous video, again, we saw a diagram through which we understood how does webhook works in GitHub and in Jenkins, right? So in this specific demonstration, we are going to use the previous projects that we created, that is the Flask portfolio. Okay, we are going to refer the same pipeline and we are going to use the same. Okay, so how do we do it? So the first thing would be, let me just create a branch out of the master branch and I'll just rename it as main v1. So this would be the branch that we would be using for triggering the job automatically whenever something is pushed into the GitHub profile into this specific branch. All right. Now let me go to settings, and here I have to go to webhooks, which is present just below the models. I click it over here, and here what it is showing you a two level of description, like what actually is webhook. So webhook allow external services to be notified when certain events happens. Okay, now here whenever we do a push, it will notify to Jenkins that some new code has been added or removed. You have to trigger the build, and that is the actual use case of webhook. So I'll click on add webhook. Now here it is expecting us to add a payload. Now what would be the payload? Now see, if you are in corporate, you might write https://jenkins.companyname.com, okay, or https jenkins.companyname.ai.io. So it may differ. Now since we are using EC2 instance, we have to pass the IP address of Jenkins server. So here I'll just copy this IP address as is, and here I'll just add GitHub-webhook followed by a forward slash. Okay. Now, make sure that you are adding forward slash over here, and this HTTP, not HTTPS. And at the last, we are adding a slash. Okay. Now, here we have passed down the payload, and this would be sending a post request to Jenkins server whenever any action has been performed. And make sure that the content type here is application JSON, and we are done to set up the webhooks. Now, once everything is done, make sure this is active and click on add webhook. Now see, here it is showing that the hook is never been triggered. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'll duplicate this page, and what I'm going to do, I'll go to main v1. Okay. And this is the exact branch that we are going to use for doing the trigger. Now, the thing is, initial setup for GitHub is done, but how would Jenkins know when the push is been done? Is there any to and fro where communication? Then yes, definitely. You have to go to your job and you have to go to configure. Here you need to scroll down and you have to enable this trigger, that is GitHub hook for GitHub SCM polling. And if you want to know more about it, just click on this question mark. It will tell you the exact thing what it will actually do. So when Jenkins server receives a GitHub push hook, now how that is received? It is basically received with the webhook. Okay. GitHub plugin checks to see whether the hook came from GitHub repository, which matches the Git repository section defined in SCM. So if you go over here, it will check this repository whenever a hook is been received. If they match and this option is enabled, GitHub plugin triggers one-time polling with Git SCM. When Git SCM polls GitHub, it finds that there is a change and initiates a build. That is automatically. The last sentence describes the behavior of Git plugin. Thus, polling and initialization, the build is not a part of GitHub plugin. Now see, it will do everything provided you have installed GitHub plugin, which installs by default. So that was the actual reason why we proceeded with install suggested plugin while we were installing GitHub, right? While we were installing Jenkins. So just click on apply and save. Now wait and do nothing. Now go to your repository and in the branch main v1, and also make sure that you have added the main v1 branch over here. I'll scroll down over here, and yeah, you can see that the current specified branch is main v1. So the Jenkins job know which branch to refer. Now I'll go to this repository and I will just make a small change over here. So in line number 1, I'll just add one comment. This is test for GitHub Webhook. I'll click on commit and see the initial code push is done. If you see, okay, and the next thing is if I go to webhook, if I do a refresh, now see right now here you can see one dot, but when I do a refresh, here it is giving you a green check and it is saying that last delivery was successful. And if I go back to my Jenkins job, here you can see a new job was triggered and it is running successfully. Okay, if you want to see it again, what I'll do, I'll just make one more change over here. I'll just remove this line so that I can show you live. So while I was explaining it, builded everything. So no worries. I'll just remove this and we are going to trigger the job once again. I'll just click on commit changes and here you have to see it will trigger a job automatically. Okay. Now let us wait and here you can see a new queue has been ready and this actually happened automatically. So that is the power of GitHub Webhook. I hope you understand how does Webhook work and what is the importance of Webhook. All right. So here we actually save time. We didn't build the job automatically. It happened automatically. Here things happen automatically once we did a push to GitHub. Right. So yeah, that was all in this practical demonstration. We learn about how does Webhook works. And yeah, that was all. And I will see you in the next one.